The Forsaken Heir. Previous episodes are available on the playlist. You can also visit our website for your favorite stories. A link is provided in the video description. Episode 40. What? Claire was shocked and said, "Good looks, good temperament, and perfect personality. More importantly, she is widowed and gold. Isn't this the Diamond King among middle-aged aunts?" Charlie nodded and said seriously, "It is indeed the fifth king of the diamond, but this aunt does not look like an aunt at all, more like an older sister." Claire asked in surprise, "Is it so exaggerated? How big does it look like?" Charlie said, "Looking at it is only 37 or 8 years old, up to 40. Real or fake?" Claire's face was unbelievable. She rarely saw a woman who was 50 years old. She would look like 37 or 18. Even a movie star is not so outrageous, right? Charlie said seriously, "I didn't make any jokes with you at all. Aunt looks really young." Claire exclaimed, "So exaggerated." Charlie smiled calmly and said, "It just so happens that she will come to eat at home tonight. You will know when you meet." Claire no longer doubted Charlie's words. She said anxiously, "This woman is father's first love. Now she is widowed and the conditions are so good. It just so happens that the relationship between my father and my mother is so unstable and even more angry. The human thing is that my mother is still missing at this time. Wouldn't it be necessary for this woman to take advantage of this?" Charlie smiled a little embarrassedly and said, "Wife, that's not what we can manage as children. After all, parents also have their freedom. As children, we can only respect, not objection." Claire suddenly became impatient. Although she knew that her mother was not a good and virtuous woman, she was also her own mother after all. How could she want to see her mother abandoned by her father? Thinking of this, her heart became even more eager to find her mother quickly and take her home. So she hurriedly said to Charlie, "Oh, it's getting late. Let's start separately. You must do as much as possible this afternoon. You must arrange all the chess and card rooms. You must take the picture of mother, carefully. Go and ask every owner and every customer in the store." Charlie said, "I don't have a picture of mother." For Elaine, Charlie was too late to hide. How could he keep any photos of her in his mobile phone? Claire hurriedly said, "I will immediately send you the ID photo my mother took some time ago." After Charlie drove out of home, he started near his home and shuttled between the chess and card rooms. Every time he went to the entrance of a chess and card room, he would take a photo of the front entrance of the chess and card room, then another photo of the chess and card room, and then send the 2 photos to his wife to prove that he had been there. Whenever Claire asked him how it turned out, his rhetoric was the same. The boss said that he had never seen this person, and the guests said that they had never seen this person. Although he didn't really ask, he knew the result must be like this. Claire looked at the various feedbacks he kept sending. On the one hand, she knew that Charlie was indeed helping her find mother, but on the other hand, she couldn't find any clues for a long time, and her heart became more and more anxious. It is said that the best time to solve a disappearance case is the 24 hours before the disappearance. If a clue can be found in these 24 hours, there is a higher probability that the person will be found. At this time, 24 hours had passed since Elaine disappeared. So Claire was also very worried and nervous now, so she went to the beauty salons and clubs that Elaine often went to without stopping. She came to one of the beauty salons, took the picture of Elaine and asked the boss, "Hello, have you seen the woman in the photo?" The boss looked at Elaine's picture and said in surprise, "Oh, isn't this Sister Elaine?" Claire asked in surprise, "Do you know my mother?" The boss smiled and said, "So you are Sister Elaine's daughter." Sister Elaine used to be a frequent visitor to me, but I haven't seen her much these days. Sister Elaine used to come to me with friends. What's the matter? Has she disappeared? Claire nodded and asked, "Then do you know her friends? Can you give me a contact method?" The boss suddenly thought of something and blurted out, "Oh, a friend of Sister Elaine's is making a face with me now, should I call her out and ask?" Claire said gratefully, "Thank you so much, for your hard work." "You're welcome, you should." The boss smiled slightly, picked up the walkie-talkie, and said, "Lily, you call Sister White, just say Sister Elaine's daughter has come to Sister Elaine, and I want to ask her face to face." A response came quickly from the intercom, "Okay, Sister White said this will come." Claire waited for a while and saw a fat, very rich and burly woman walking out with a mask on her face. This woman's face is a bit too fat, so the entire mask is a little bit too much, and it looks somewhat funny. But Claire didn't mean to laugh. She just looked at each other expectantly, hoping to get some information and clues from her mother. That white sister walked up to Claire, looked her up and down, and asked, "Are you Elaine's daughter?" Claire hurriedly said respectfully, "Hello Aunt White, I am Elaine's daughter. I would like to ask you, have you seen my mother since yesterday?" Sister White snorted angrily, "Friends like your mother, we can't afford it." Claire hurriedly asked, "Aunt White, what do you mean by this? Does my mother have any conflicts with you?" Sister White curled her lips and said, "How dare I have any conflicts with the old horse? I just called her to make a face with her yesterday afternoon, but do you know how your mother spoke?" Claire hurriedly asked, "Aunt White, what did my mother say at the time?" Sister White scolded angrily, "What kind of identity your mother said at the time? How could she have facials with me? She also said that people like us do facials in a beauty salon. She wants to buy the beauty salon directly. Come down, serve her alone, and said that she wants to draw a line with us." After speaking, Sister White looked at Claire and asked angrily, "Talk to yourself, is your mother going too far? Everyone is a friend. I kindly asked her to come out and make a face together. She was so sarcastic and ridiculed me. She also said that I was a poor woman and said that she had wealth that I could not imagine in my life. What does she mean? She got rich? Can't look at our poor sisters. If you don't look at me, just don't contact me. What are you doing to harm someone? I provoke you? Why did you come up to harm me? You really mad at me?" Sister White said annoyedly. The already tight mask on her face was collapsed by her twisted facial muscles. She looked at the mask on the ground, feeling distressed. Thinking of yesterday's events, she felt even more depressed to death. Although she and Elaine are not so good friends, they all have a good friendship. They often play together, make faces together, and often play cards together. Friends like this, everyone has a lot of each other, and they usually greet each other with a polite smile, and no one will embarrass anyone. But Elaine was on the phone yesterday and ridiculed her so badly that she was so angry that she didn't sleep last night. Claire was puzzled. Why did her mother talk to Sister White like this? She doesn't have much money, but she has been very low-key recently. Did she find any windfall yesterday? She also said that she would buy a beauty salon and serve herself alone, which proves that this windfall is not a small amount. But the problem came again. Even if she really got a windfall, there is no need to evaporate. What on earth is this kind of happenings? The more Claire thought about it, the more she didn't understand. At this time, the angry Sister White asked, "What? Your mother is missing?" Claire hurriedly nodded and said, "Yes. She hasn't come back since she went out at noon yesterday, and she couldn't get through the phone, WeChat didn't reply, and the video couldn't get through. It's been a day and a night." Sister White was stunned, and then snorted and said, "It may be that after your mother got rich, not only did she do with old friends like us, but even you and your dad, so she chose to evaporate." "Got it." As she said, Sister White sighed slightly and said, "I feel much better after hearing what you say. Elaine can't even look down on her husband and daughter, or even poor sisters like us. It's also normal." Claire felt a little bit in his heart. She thought of her Aunt Horia. Horia evaporated with more than 15 million people at the time. It is said that she still raised her little white face outside and eloped with her. If Mother really got a windfall, would she be the same as Horia? Thinking of this, Claire suddenly felt nervous. She hurriedly asked Sister White again, "Aunt White, do you know any other clues?" Sister White waved her hand and said, "I just made a phone call with your mother. From then to now, I have never contacted her again, and there is no news about her." Claire could only say gratefully, "Thank you, Aunt White." Sister White said indifferently, "You don't need to be polite, but I should thank you. I was quite flustered in my heart. Listening to you, I suddenly feel better." Claire could only say sincerely to Sister White, "Aunt White, I'm really sorry, I apologize to you for my mother." Sister White waved her hand and said seriously, "You don't need to apologize. If your mother can't be found, then forget it. But if you can find her, you tell her not to show up in front of me in the future, otherwise I don't care about her. How rich she is, I will smoke her with a big mouth." Claire nodded awkwardly, and after thanking her again, she hurriedly left the beauty salon. After coming out, Claire has been thinking about this issue. According to Mom's character, if she really talked to Sister White like that on the phone, it would prove that she was really rich, otherwise she would definitely not dare to talk like that. But she remembered that at noon yesterday, Mother wanted to ask Dad for money and went to the beauty salon to make a face. Later, she went to Charlie to ask for it, but Charlie didn't give her anything. In other words, Mother was penniless. So why didn't she miss that Aunt White while on the phone not long afterwards, in the tone of a nouveau riche? To say that in such a short period of time, she suddenly became rich? Where does the money come from? Taking a step back, even if she is really rich, why should she disappear? Is it really because she hates her and father when she has money? It's not impossible with her mother's personality, but she has been thinking of Thompson for a long time. Even if she did get a fortune by accident, it stands to reason that she should hide the money quietly, and then continue to come back to enjoy the luxurious Thompson villa. This is in line with her mother's behavioral style. It wasn't that after getting a sum of money, the world evaporated immediately, and she couldn't even live in the Thompson villa, not to mention that she didn't even live in the Thompson villa to sleep. The more Claire thought about it, the more she felt that this matter was strange and very contradictory, and there was a strange and unexplainable aura everywhere. However, the clues stopped abruptly when they arrived at Aunt White, and for the time being, she couldn't continue to explore other clues. Therefore, to solve these mysteries, more clues must be found. Once the mystery is solved, then the whereabouts of Mother will be clear. Otherwise, she may never find where her mother is. Charlie drove around Oris Hill City, thinking about his mother-in-law. He saw his wife getting more and more anxious, and he didn't want his wife to suffer such torture from the bottom of his heart. But now he hasn't figured out exactly what method should be used to release Elaine. As he drove through an intersection, he saw the eye-catching words on the intersection billboard: "All the people mobilize, resolutely crack down on MLM and MLM behavior in disguise, completely eradicate the soil for MLM survival, and build a safe and harmonious Oris Hill." Seeing this slogan, Charlie suddenly had a plan. So he immediately called Isaac and asked, "How is my mother-in-law in the detention center recently?" Isaac respectfully said, "Mr. Wade, your mother-in-law suffered a bit in the detention center. It seems that everyone in the cell is not pleasing to her eyes, so she has to be treated." Charlie snorted and said, "She used to scold old ladies so badly before, and this lady has such a grudge. This time, she will definitely not let her go easily. It is normal for her to suffer a bit." Isaac asked, "Mr. Wade, do you think about how to solve this problem? With all due respect, your mother-in-law has suffered so much in it. If you let her out, she will definitely not give up, the first thing. It must be trouble for you." Charlie smiled and said, "Don't worry about this. I already have a general plan, but I still need your cooperation. You must cooperate with me and act in a big show." Isaac hurriedly said, "Mr. Wade, you can just ask if you have any questions." Charlie smiled indifferently, "I am not ready to let her out now, I will contact you when I want." "Okay, master." Charlie pretended to look for it all afternoon, and received a call, saying that Aunt was going home soon, so he drove home. Claire also received a call from her father. Although she was reluctant, she drove home. Elsa heard that there was a visitor at home, and said tonight that she did not want to go home for dinner. Claire wanted her to accompany her, so she wouldn't be so embarrassed, but Elsa felt embarrassed herself, so she used the excuse to work overtime and eat out by herself. Claire couldn't force it, so she said to Jacob, "Dad, after your classmates come later, try not to talk about me. I am not in a good mood today, and I don't want to talk too much." Jacob also knows that if his daughter is willing to go home at this time and eat this meal with him and his old classmates, even if it is a lot of face, he can't force her. So he said to Charlie, "Good son-in-law, you have to talk more at the dinner table later, and be more active." "Okay." Charlie nodded awkwardly. At this time, the doorbell in the villa rang. Jacob couldn't wait to walk to the video phone, and immediately said to Charlie and Claire excitedly, "They are here, I'll open the door." After speaking, he opened the door and went through the yard to open the door. Claire looked at Jacob's positive look, couldn't help sighing, and asked Charlie, "You said my dad and that aunt, is there something else?" Charlie smiled and said, "They haven't seen each other for more than 20 years, what can I say?" "You must be thinking too much," Claire said earnestly, "but when I see my dad like this, he seemed to be a little too excited." Charlie comforted, "You don't know about this. After all, they have had a history." Claire hurriedly said, "But my dad has already married my mother, and he and my mother are not divorced. He is responsible for and must be loyal to the marriage." Charlie smiled and said, "It seems like Dad really had an extramarital affair. He just saw his first love today. How could it be so serious as you said?" Claire sighed and said, "I'm just worried, not that they already have something now." At this time, Miking was outside the villa, marveling at this top-notch villa in Oris Hill. She has been away from China for a long time, so she doesn't understand many domestic real estate and other things, nor does she understand. When Jacob told her the address, he only talked about Thompson Villa A05, and Miking didn't think too much. But after she came to Thompson, she discovered that the villa in this place turned out to be so luxurious and atmospheric. Seeing that Jacob lives in such a luxurious villa area now, it made her faintly surprised. Because she used to ask her classmates to inquire about Jacob's recent developments over the years, but the feedback she got was that he was not very happy, which made her a little confused. While waiting for Jacob to open the door outside the gate of A05, Paul was bored, so he checked the approximate selling price with his mobile phone, and said to his mother, "The house here needs about 80 million to more than 1 billion. I read it online. It is said that Type A villas are the largest in size, and they probably sell for 1 to several tens of millions." Miking nodded and said, "More than 1 billion is not expensive, but I don't quite understand. In your Uncle Wilson's situation, how can he afford the villa here?" Paul smiled slightly and said, "This requires you to ask him personally." Miking also smiled and said, "Maybe it's called hiding." Paul thought for a while, and said, "Well, let me be honest, I feel that Uncle Wilson should be a good person, but not like a hidden person." Miking asked curiously, "What do you mean by that?" Paul said, "It's nothing, it just feels a little strange." Miking smiled and said, "Well, let's not discuss this. I should be happy for the old classmate who can live in such an expensive villa. As for the others, we don't have to ask about it." Paul nodded and said seriously, "Mom, you are right." At this time, Jacob had also opened the door of the villa. When he saw Miking and Paul, he immediately said excitedly, "Oh, Miking and Paul, you are here, please come in quickly." Miking smiled and said, "Oh, Jacob, your house is really beautiful. When I entered this community just now, it felt very high-end and atmosphere. This should be the best villa area in Oris Hill." Jacob said modestly, "I don't know if it's the best. Actually, I just moved in just 2 days ago." Miking and Paul walked into the villa with Jacob. Seeing the exquisite decoration in the yard, Miking couldn't help sighing, "It seems that the decoration of your villa is also a lot of thoughtful." It should be designed for you by a high-end designer. Jacob said, in fact, this villa was not decorated by us. In fact, this villa was also given to my son-in-law by his friend. Paul's expression was very surprised, and he blurted out, Uncle Wilson, this villa is worth more than 1 billion, right? Mr. Charlie's friend was willing to give him such an expensive villa. Jacob nodded and said, not only the villa was given away, but even the decoration was paid for by his friends. We just bought some furniture by ourselves and didn't spend much money. Paul couldn't help asking, is this villa also earned by Mr. Charlie showing feng shui for others? Jacob happily said, you really guessed right. This villa is his reward for showing others feng shui. Let me tell you, don't look at my son-in-law. It seems that there is nothing serious about doing things, and there is nothing to do. But his ability to look at feng shui is truly unique in the upper class of Oris Hill. Paul felt a little strange in his heart. Normally speaking, no matter how expensive feng shui masters are, there will be more than 1 or 200 million price tags once, right? Charlie showed others feng shui, and others gave him such a good villa, coupled with exquisite decoration. This should not only be for the villa, there must be other reasons. It seems that Charlie is definitely not an ordinary person. Thinking of this, Paul couldn't help but exclaimed, actually, I also believe in feng shui. But I have never met a very good and very capable feng shui master. Since Mr. Charlie is so capable, then my new company must ask him to help me take a look at feng shui. Jacob smiled and said, then you can go back and talk to him. Charlie is very interesting, I believe he will not refuse you. At this time, Jacob had taken Miking and her son Paul and walked in through the yard. When they met, Claire was shocked by Miking. She heard Charlie say that Miking's temperament and appearance were very good, but she didn't expect it to be so good. Being a woman, Claire even envied Miking a little. After all, it is really amazing that a woman can maintain such a good level at the age of about 50. Miking was also a little surprised when she saw Claire. She really didn't expect that the daughters of Jacob and Elaine was so beautiful and outstanding. The Paul next to him, at the moment he saw Claire, couldn't help being a little stunned. He was also shocked by Claire's beauty and temperament. Jacob introduced at this time, Miking, let me introduce to you, this is my daughter Claire. After that, he looked at Claire again, and said with a smile, Claire, this is your father's old classmate, Miking, you may want her to be called Aunt. Claire was shocked by Miking's beauty and temperament, and at the same time was even more worried about the relationship between her father and her. Because compared with Miking, her mother really seems to be 1,000 miles away. In addition, the relationship between the two of them is not stable. Now that there is such a strong competitor, it will become more fragile. However, out of politeness, she shook hands with Miking very warmly, and said with some respect, Hello, Aunt. Miking smiled, and sighed sincerely, Claire, you really look so beautiful. Claire said modestly, Aunt, you really appreciate it. Compared to you, I am far behind. No, Miking said seriously, when I was your age, I was not as beautiful as you. After that, she looked at Charlie and said with a smile, Charlie is really blessed to marry such a good wife. Charlie smiled and nodded and said, Aunt, you are right. This is my blessing." Miking smiled and introduced her son again, and said, "Claire, this is my son Paul. He should be 1 year younger than you. It stands to reason that he should call you sister." Paul on the side hurriedly stretched out his hand to Claire and said seriously, "Hello Miss Wilson, I am Paul, my full name is Paul Smith, and I am glad to meet you." Claire was hesitating whether to shake hands with Paul, and Miking hurriedly said, "Son, Claire is a married person. It is necessary to avoid suspicion when contacting the opposite S3X." Only then did Paul come back to his senses, hurriedly withdrew his hand, and smiled awkwardly, "I'm really embarrassed, it's because I was rash." Claire nodded slightly and smiled as a response. Charlie couldn't help being surprised. Miking's tutoring was really extraordinary. Jacob couldn't wait to say at this time, "Miking, I have already bought all the ingredients and seasonings related to those dishes, and are in the kitchen now. We'll go in and beat it, what do you think?" Miking naturally nodded and smiled, "No problem, let's cook a meal for the children today." "After all," she said to Paul, "Son, you have a good chat with Mr. Waite and his wife. In the future, you have to develop as much as possible for a long time. Everyone knows and understands more. It is good for everyone's future development. Young people should communicate more and make more friends to expand network." Paul nodded hurriedly and said, "Mom, don't worry, I know." Jacob took Miking to the kitchen and turned around to explain to Charlie, saying, "My son-in-law, there is my good tea on the coffee table. You can make a cup and give Paul a taste." Charlie nodded, "Okay Dad, I see." Jacob hurriedly said, "Also, don't forget the thing I reminded you." Charlie knew what he was talking about. He wanted to pay more attention. If the mother-in-law came back, she would not be allowed to enter the door and break Miking's affairs in her own house. So he smiled and said, "Dad, don't worry, I will give you a military order for this matter, and there will be no mistakes." Jacob gave him a thumbs up and exclaimed, "Really my good son-in-law, I will not treat you badly in the future." After speaking, Jacob took Miking and plunged into the kitchen. Claire asked Charlie curiously, "What did Dad tell you? The two of you are mysterious and seem to be engaged in a shameful conspiracy." Charlie said, "He definitely can't tell her that Dad let him be here to guard. If Mom comes back, he will carry her away. If he can't carry, he will knock her out and carry her away." So he smiled and said, "It's okay. Dad just asked me to entertain Paul. Don't let him think that our family has no hospitality." "Really?" Claire was full of disbelief. Charlie said seriously, "Of course it's true. Didn't you hear that he asked me to make tea for Paul just now?" As he said, he hurriedly greeted Paul and said, "Come here to Paul, and I will give you a taste of the high-end tea my father-in-law bought from the WeChat tea seller." Charlie feels that Paul is an American, even if he is half of Chinese ancestry. He probably doesn't know much about tea when he lives in the United States. Therefore, the ordinary tea that his father-in-law bought by the deceit should still be able to fool him. Unexpectedly, Paul immediately smiled and said, "Oh, what I like most is drinking tea. Since Uncle Wilson has good tea here, I must try it." Charlie was taken aback for a while, and said with a smile, "Since you understand tea, then I think you might be disappointed. With that, he took Paul to sit down on the sofa, ready to make tea. Claire didn't really want to chat with her father's first lover's son, so she said to the two of them, "You two men talk, I don't like tea too much, and I have a headache. I'll go back to the house and rest for a while, sorry. I'm lost." Paul hurriedly stood up and said politely, "Okay Miss Wilson, take a rest first." Claire went upstairs, and Charlie said to Paul, "Sit down, don't stand and talk." After Paul sat down, he looked at the Hainan yellow rosewood sofa sitting under him, and said in surprise, "The material of this sofa is really good." At first glance, it is made of sea yellow material, and it is old. As soon as the pulp comes out, the texture of this wood is particularly beautiful, a good thing. Charlie was a bit stunned. He really didn't expect that although Paul was a mixed race, his mother was completely a Chinese. He speaks good Chinese, knows tea, knows wood, and even knows Patna. The other half of this guy's American ancestry is not fake, right? And why is his hobbies so similar to his old man? Had it not been for his blonde hair and a standard white skin color, he would even doubt if he had been left behind by the old master. So Charlie looked at Paul and asked curiously, "Paul, did you often come to China before?" Paul shook his head and said with a smile, "I just come here on business occasionally, but every time it doesn't take more than a week." Charlie asked with a puzzled look, "Then how do you know so much about tea, Chinese furniture, and wood?" Paul smiled and said, "It's mainly because my mother likes these. I only came into contact with these when I was a child." As he said, Paul said again, "Don't look at me as if I look like a mixed race, and I seem to be more of a white race, but in fact I am a downright yellow person in my bones. I have been very influenced by my mother since I was a child. I like Chinese culture and Chinese food, Chinese habits, and everything in China. That's it." Charlie nodded, boiled water in the sea of tea, and started to prepare tea, while letting people be fooled into buying tea on WeChat. After brewing the tea, Charlie poured a cup for Paul and himself, and smiled and said to Paul, "Come, taste my old master's tea." Paul nodded and thanked him, then took his teacup to his lips and took a sip. Immediately afterwards, his expression became a little weird. After tasting it for a long time, he said embarrassedly, "Uncle Wilson's taste in drinking tea is very strange. To be honest, I can't taste the goodness of this tea. Why does Uncle Wilson treat it as a good treasure? Where's the tea?" Charlie thought to himself that this Paul was really acquainted, much better than his own husband. He is a silly old master who has been drinking this kind of tea. Not only did he fail to drink it, but the more he drank, the better it tasted. If he hadn't stopped him, he would definitely find the WeChat girl who sells tea to buy some more. So he smiled and said to Paul, "Father-in-law bought this tea from a liar on WeChat. It cost a lot of money, but it's really not a good thing." Paul also understood what was going on. He nodded slightly and said to Charlie, "I have the superb one that I entrusted to others and bought from the south. I have a chance to give some to Mr. Charlie next day. Let Uncle Wilson taste it. The tea is really good." It was a tea that was picked and fried by the top master. Charlie politely thanked him and said, "Father-in-law doesn't know much about tea, but he just likes it very much, so if you give him good tea, it will be a violent thing." Just keep drinking this tea and entertain yourself. In fact, Charlie's psychological activity is that son-in-law hasn't given him any good tea. Does it seem inappropriate for him, an outsider? Paul didn't realize Charlie's mentality. He thought of what Jacob told him before entering the villa, and looked at Charlie curiously. "Mr. Charlie, I heard Uncle Wilson say that this villa is for others to see. Is it true that I earned it from Feng Shui?" Charlie smiled slightly and said, "That's right. Actually, it's not just looking at Feng Shui, but by looking at Feng Shui, it solves some of the more important problems for others." Paul said very sincerely, "Mr. Charlie will tell you that, I am a person who has studied the Book of Changes and gossip and other things, but I have never had a very good master to get started, and my spare time is also relatively limited. So my research is relatively superficial." After speaking, Paul said again, "By the way, Mr. Charlie, my new company will be officially opened in Oris Hill soon. Could you please help me take a look at Feng Shui?" Charlie saw that this Paul was very friendly to himself, and his EQ and quality were relatively high. In line with the principle of reaching out and not hitting the smiley person, he smiled and said, "When will your company open? I can take time to have a look." Paul was very excited and said, "Thank you so much. My company will open the day after tomorrow. If you have time, can it be tomorrow?" "It is okay." In the kitchen at this moment, Miking has put on her apron, and with the help of Jacob, she began to process the ingredients and prepare to cook. Jacob hit the side, playing very diligently. He dreams of having such a day. He and his beloved Miking can have a sumptuous dinner in the kitchen together. But he didn't expect that this dream would finally come true after 20 years. Miking was full of emotion. She has lived in the United States with her husband for more than 20 years, and the two often cook together, but she has never made herself feel the way she is now. She feels that the man next to her, as long as he stands by her side, he can bring her an infinite sense of intimacy. Cooking for him by her, busy in the kitchen with him, full of joy and satisfaction. When two people are cooking together, there is always some friction and contact on the body. Sometimes they rub their hands, sometimes they touch other parts. Soon, the two of them are red face. After all, both of them have had a lot of past events, and they are each other's first love, and even when they first tasted the forbidden fruit, they both gave each other the first time. So after so many years, after seeing each other again, the hearts of these two people are always affected by the memories of the past. It is as if there is a strong magnetic field inside the two people, and it is the kind of magnetic field that the opposite S3X attracts. When Jacob laid hands on Miking, they had been close to each other countless times, and had an impulse in heart several times, wanting to hug the other person directly in arms. But this impulse was quickly suppressed by the timidity in his heart. Miking herself is very capable in housework, but today, because she has her first love around her, she also feels that no matter what she does, she seems a little absent-minded. Even always distracted by the man around her. A few times when she cut things, she almost cut her own hands because of distraction. Jacob was also a little absent-minded by the side. His energy was not on washing vegetables, picking vegetables, and helping Miking at all, but on Miking herself. At this moment, Jacob even regretted moving to Thompson's big villa. Because, if it were in the previous home, in such a small kitchen, 2 people were busy working in it, even if they borrowed it, they would have to touch or even stick to each other. But the kitchen of Thompson's villa is really too big. Even if there are 5 people working in it at the same time, they can be in order without disturbing each other. Therefore, every time Jacob wants to get closer to Miking, he needs to find some special reasons or excuses. Jacob struggled for a long time and didn't dare to hug Miking. Every time he mustered up the courage, he soon persuaded himself against it. Finally, when Miking put the shrimp into the pot, Jacob suddenly showed courage and hugged her from behind Miking, and murmured nervously and excitedly in her mouth, "Miking, over the past 20 years, I really missed you." Suddenly, Miking was hugged tightly by Jacob, and her whole body stiffened in a moment. From the bottom of her heart, why didn't she hope that Jacob could hug herself tightly after 20 years? After all, this is the only person she has loved in her life. At this moment, the first lover from more than 20 years ago hugged her so tightly, his hands clasped tightly on her belly, and the feeling seemed to have brought her back to the 20-year-old youth years. The true feelings in Miking's heart were surging, and she suddenly couldn't help it, and put her hand on the other's hand. But at the moment she put her hand on Jacob's hand, she suddenly realized that it was wrong for her to do so. So she broke away from Jacob's embrace, arranging her hair in a panic, and said unnaturally, "Jacob, we two can't do this, you are married after all, and I can't wrong Elaine." Jacob was immediately anxious, and blurted out, "At the beginning, she was sorry for you. When we were together, we were in such a good relationship. She knew that I was your boyfriend, and she took advantage of it when I was drunk. And if she were not so shameless, the 2 of us would have already been together." Miking sighed lightly and said, "Even though the past was her fault, I was the one who chose to let go. Since I have chosen to let go and give you to her, I will not be like her back then. I'm sorry for that, and I'm sorry for her again. This is a matter of principle. Otherwise, would I be like her?" Jacob was anxious and said, "That woman has almost ruined the relationship between the 2 of us for a lifetime. Do you still need to talk about her about principles at this time?" Miking said seriously, "In fact, after that incident happened back then, I also knew in my heart that all of this was caused by Elaine behind my back. I knew she is a villain, but I can't become a villain because of being hurt by a villain." As she said, she looked at Jacob again, and said very seriously, "You are her husband after all. I can meet you and eat with you like a normal friend or an old classmate, but we can't have such things, it's not possible at all." Jacob's tears were streaming down. He looked at Miking and choked and said, "Is it impossible for the 2 of us in this life? After so many years, we can finally meet again, don't you want to make up for us? Was it a regret back then?" Miking's expression was also a bit painful, and she sighed, "Of course I want to, otherwise I won't make a special trip back from the United States, but I think that gentlemen must do everything they want when it comes to money and feelings. If we the 2 have a chance to be together again, and that must be after you and Elaine divorced." Jacob blurted out without hesitation, "Then I will divorce her immediately." Miking said very seriously, "Jacob, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that after you divorce Elaine, the 2 of us can be together." Jacob asked nervously, "My king, what do you mean by this? I don't understand, don't you want to be with me?" My king said sincerely, "Jacob, after all we haven't seen each other for so many years, how could we suddenly decide to be together? This is too trifling." As she said with a serious face, "We were in school when we were dating. At that time, we were all students. We had to study and socialize with our classmates every day. We never lived together. Life is different from falling in love. Especially at our age, we must not only consider our own life, not only our own feelings, but also our children and their views on each other. So this kind of thing is not something we can decide with our lips when we are like teenagers. We must think carefully before we can make a more mature decision." Jacob said immediately, "I can't accept what you said. I know you still have feelings for me in your heart, and I have feelings for you in my heart. Since both people have feelings, what can't you break through?" With that said, Jacob forced himself to ask, "My king, I want you to tell the truth, do you really feel about me now?" My king said with some embarrassment, "How do you ask me to answer your question? After all, we were together back then, and the relationship was so good, and we were all our first loves, and we had regrets for more than 20 years. It's self-deception." As she said, my king said again, "But as I said just now, this matter is not just about how you feel." Jacob's tears flowed more and more, aggrieved like a child. For so many years, he has suffered too much emotionally. So he felt great comfort at the moment when my king came back. When he saw my king, he really realized that his previous life had always been in dire straits. Therefore, he didn't want to live that kind of life for a minute. Seeing Jacob crying like a child, my king's eyes were red. She walked up to Jacob, used her sleeves to gently wipe away his tears, and said distressedly, "Jacob, you have worked so hard for so many years. If you can go back in time, return to the one before our graduation. At that time, even if you and Elaine already have facts, I will not give up on you." As she said, she sighed sadly again, "It's a pity, time is gone, no one can let the years turn back. In a blink of an eye, we are all middle-aged and elderly people over 100 years old." Jacob grasped her hand tightly and said excitedly, "My king. Because we can't let the years turn back, we should not let down our future. Let us not let down in a second." At this point, Jacob was very excited, knelt on one knee, and blurted out, "My king, I want to be with you." Seeing him kneeling, my king suddenly panicked, and hurriedly pulled him up and blurted out, "Oh, Jacob, what are you doing? Get up." Jacob said stubbornly, "If you don't agree to me, then I won't be able to get up here." My king glanced at the door of the kitchen and said anxiously, "Oh, get up quickly, if you let the children come in, how can you explain this?" Jacob said seriously, "If Paul comes in and sees it, then I will tell him that I love his mother. I want to be with his mother and hope to be blessed by him. If it is Claire seeing it, then I will tell her that I love you, and I want to divorce her mother and be with you." When talking about this, Jacob suddenly became emotional. He observed at my king's eyes and said emotionally, "My king, I'm really not joking with you. Every word I say comes from the bottom of my heart. In the past 20 years since you left, I have never been happy. We are all this old, why can't we put aside those scruples and pursue a real love vigorously? Miking sighed faintly. Jacob, I have thought about everything you said, and to be honest, I also have illusions in my heart. It's just that the current situation is really not like before. The third party I hate most in my life. So I don't want to become a third party, so we shouldn't be so anxious about this matter. Give me some time, and I will give you some time. Jacob hurriedly asked, Are you willing to stay with me after I divorced Elaine? Miking's big beautiful eyes with a few fine wrinkles observed at Jacob unblinkingly, and said seriously, Jacob, I admit that one of my big motives for returning to China is to hope to see you again. I hope I can continue with you again. Having said that, she changed the conversation and said, However, we are not 18 or even 20-year-old youngsters. We have to think carefully about things now. I have no way to answer the question of whether we are willing to be with you. After you are truly single, the two of us have tried to get along for a while, and I will answer your question solemnly. Jacob blurted out without hesitation, I am willing, 10,000 times willing, 1,000,000 times willing. Miking said seriously, Jacob, I also hope that you will seriously and solemnly consider Elaine, your marriage. Consider whether there is still love between you two. If you still have love, then I will wish you all the same as before. If you do not have love, then you must tell her clearly as early as possible. I still know your character very well. If you are constantly interrupted, you will always be disturbed. Miking is already a complete winner in life, but the only thing she has not won in her life is true love. Therefore, she is obsessed with Jacob. Everyone should have an obsessive object in their heart. If this obsessive object is with him, then his life is happy and his life is fulfilled, but if the obsessive object is not with him together, he will regret for life. Therefore, Miking's return to China this time can be said to be nothing else, just to rediscover the unforgettable love during this period of sunset in life. Jacob couldn't wait to say, Miking, as long as you don't dislike me and are willing to stay with me, I will definitely divorce Elaine. Miking sighed softly and said, whether you and her were intentional or unintentional, or if you were used by others, in the final analysis, you have betrayed our feelings. If you are really willing to make up for it, then of course I am also willing. Give you a chance. Recalling that year, Jacob suddenly stood up and once again hugged Miking face to face. While hugging her tightly, he said, Miking, I regretted what happened back then for more than 20 years. This time I will never let myself regret it again. You must wait for me. Miking nodded and said softly, Okay. I'm waiting for you. But you can't hold me like this anymore. What we do now is wrong. Jacob said stubbornly, whether it is right or wrong, I just want to hold you now. Miking was struggling in her heart. Want to talk about her feeling of being held in his arms, but she has lived a decent life in her life and cannot accept that she is so close to a married man. So she said in a panic, Oh, you let me go first, it's not good for us, and I still have to cook. Jacob said, I have you in my heart, and you also have me in your heart. What's so bad about this? After speaking, Jacob actually plucked up the courage, lowered his head and wanted to kiss Miking. Miking hurriedly avoided him, and said very solemnly, Have you talked to yourself for a long time? As she was talking, a burning smell spread in the kitchen. Miking exclaimed, "Oh, my Longjing shrimp!" Having said that, she hurriedly pushed Jacob away, blushing, and ran to the side of the stove, and when she looked into the pot, she let out a mournful cry, "It's over, it's over, the shrimps are all cooked." Jacob quickly reminded her from the side, "Quickly turn off the fire, or it will burn out soon." Miking hurriedly turned off the gas on the stove. The shrimp that had been burnt in the pot said helplessly, "I blame you, originally this was my best dish, but it's all over now." Jacob was also embarrassed and guilty, and said, "Should I go out and buy you a bag of shrimps again?" At this time, both Charlie and Paul, who were drinking tea outside, could smell the mushy smell spreading out of the kitchen, and Charlie subconsciously said, "Is it not a mess?" Paul frowned and said, "My mother cooks very professionally. It shouldn't happen to her." Charlie stood up and said, "Paul, sit down for a while. I'll go in and take a look." "Don't be surprised." Paul hurriedly said, "I will come too." After saying that he was about to get up, Charlie stretched out his hand, pressed him back, and said with a smile, "Sit and drink tea. I'll just go and see it." What Charlie was thinking at this time was, if his mother and father-in-law were doing the firewood in the kitchen at this time, and the two of them were disheveled and forgot what was in the pot, how embarrassing would he be to rush in like this? He's different. His mother and Jacob are not related by blood. He just went in to watch the show. Paul didn't know that Charlie's heart at this time was all thoughts of watching the show. Seeing that Charlie had already stepped to the kitchen, he didn't insist on it anymore. Charlie came to the kitchen, opened the kitchen door, and probed in. Seeing that the two people in the kitchen were hurriedly tidying up and had burnt the pot, their clothes looked neat, and there was nothing wrong with them, Charlie couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. He wanted to come over and eat a melon, but he didn't even have a watermelon rind. However, looking at the faces of the old man and his first love, both seem to be a little red, and it feels as if the two should have had some closer contact just now. So Charlie deliberately pretended to be surprised and asked, "Dad, Aunt, I don't know what burned, are you two all right?" Jacob hurriedly said in a panic, "Well, nothing is wrong, just accident, the pot burned, I am dealing with it, don't worry." Charlie said, "Two people can still see the confusion after watching a pot, you two must have done nothing good just now." Jacob said with a guilty conscience at this time, "Charlie, you should go out and have tea with Paul. It is enough to have me and Aunt here." The two first lovers, who had been in the kitchen for more than an hour, finally made a table of food. Jacob ran out to tell Charlie and Paul, "Get ready, we can eat." After speaking, he asked Paul again, "By the way, Paul, do you want to drink 2 cups at night?" Paul smiled and took out a portable gift box and said, "Uncle Wilson, I just brought 2 bottles of 30-year-old Mutai. This bottle of Mutai is not an ordinary Mutai. It was an export version more than 20 years ago. It was exported to the United States, and then collected by collectors in the United States. It has been properly preserved until now. Each bottle is 2 kilograms." Jacob was surprised and said, "For 30 years of aging more than 20 years ago, isn't it more than 50 years since now?" "Yes." Paul said with a smile, "It should be about 56 years. Jacob sighed, "Oh, this wine is too precious. It's a waste to give it to me. You should keep it for yourself." Paul hurriedly said, "Uncle Wilson, you don't need to be so polite to me. It was originally a gift for you. If you want, we will drink it with a bottle in the evening. If you don't want it, we will change another wine." When Jacob heard this, he smiled and said, "In that case, thank you. Let's drink a bottle tonight." With that said, Jacob said to Charlie again, "Charlie, you go upstairs and tell Claire to come down for dinner." Charlie nodded and said, "Then I will go upstairs and call her." After that, Charlie got upstairs, and when he came to the bedroom, he found Claire lying on the bed with her back to the door. He said, "Wife, come downstairs to eat." While talking, Charlie was about to walk into the bedroom when he heard his wife say, "Oh, don't come here yet." Immediately afterwards, Claire stood up, turned her back to Charlie, as if reaching out and wiping her eyes. Charlie hurriedly walked around in front of her, looked at her red eyes, and asked, "Wife, why are you crying again?" Claire shook her head and stubbornly denied, "I didn't cry, but my eyes were a little uncomfortable." Charlie said distressedly, still quibbling, "Your eyes are red like this, and you still said I didn't cry." After speaking, he asked softly, "Is it because of Mom?" Claire was silent for a moment, then sighed, nodded and said, "It has been almost 30 hours now, and there is no news yet. I'm really afraid that Mom will have some accident." As she said, tears burst into her eyes again. "Furthermore, when such a big thing happened at home, I expected my dad to be able to stick with me, but I didn't expect him to." At this point, Claire couldn't speak anymore. She couldn't keep her emotions all at once, so she cried out. Charlie hurriedly stretched out his hand and took her in his arms. While gently tapping her back, he comforted in her ear, "Wife, don't cry, Mom will definitely be fine. Don't worry, I assure you." Claire sobbed and asked, "What can you promise me? You don't know where she is, you don't know what she has gone through, and you don't know whether she is in danger." Charlie said seriously, "Don't worry, since I have promised you, I will definitely not let her have trouble. I will ask those capable friends to help me find a way." Claire hurriedly asked, "Really? You go to them, can they be willing to help?" Charlie smiled and said, "Don't worry about it. If someone agrees, they are stronger than us and have a wider network than us. Maybe they can help us figure out what happened." Claire breathed a sigh of relief and said gratefully, "Charlie, that's really thank you so much." Charlie smiled and said, "Silly girl, I'm your husband, why are you polite to me?" As he said, he patted her on the shoulder hurriedly, and said, let's go down for dinner first, and after dinner, I'll go out to find my friends and see if they can help. If they don't, then I will ask them for help. Anyway, I promise you that Mom will come back safely." Claire nodded heavily, feeling a lot more comfortable. Before that, she felt that she was the only one in the family thinking about her mother's disappearance. Now that Charlie stood with herself so resolutely and was willing to help, she was naturally relieved. Charlie really felt sorry for Claire at this time. It can be seen that Elaine's disappearance has been worrying her all the time. If Elaine is not allowed to come back quickly, Elaine hasn't had any major incidents in the detention center, and his wife is probably already unbearable. So he decided in his heart that he would implement it tomorrow. He had already figured out the plan, and he could get Elaine back the day after tomorrow. To comfort Claire, Charlie took her downstairs. In the restaurant downstairs, Jacob and Miking had already prepared a table of food. On the other hand, Paul opened one of the rare bottles of Mao Tai aging. Seeing Charlie and Claire walking down, he smiled and asked Charlie, "Mr. Charlie, would you like to have 2 glasses?" Charlie smiled slightly and said, "Okay, then I will have 2 drinks with you." Claire on the side reminded in a low voice, "Aren't you going to find your friends after dinner? Or don't drink, you can't drive after drinking." Charlie smiled and said, "It's okay. I'll take a taxi after I finish drinking." It's the first time Mr. Paul came to the house. It's impossible to not drink 2 drinks with him. Hearing this, Claire nodded and said, "Okay, as long as you don't drive anymore." At this time, Jacob walked out of the kitchen with a pot of beef soup, and saw Claire. He smiled and said, "Oh, Claire, try your aunt's craftsmanship later. I just stole it." After eating 2 bites, "I can tell you this, just 3 words, it is great." Claire had no appetite for food at all now, not to mention that the meal was made by her mother's rival in love back then, so she didn't want to eat it even more. But because of face, she could only sit down at the table. At this time, Miking took off her apron and walked out of the kitchen with the bowls and chopsticks. Seeing that Charlie and Claire were both down, she smiled slightly and said, "I'm sorry, I made you wait for a long time to eat." Then, she asked Charlie and Claire with concern, "You two must be hungry? Come on, move your chopsticks. The table is full of home-cooked dishes of varying taste made by Miking. There are zhukyu, braised prawns in oil, dongpo meat, fish head tofu, fried shrimp eel and so on. These dishes are really beautiful, and they are not much less than professional restaurants." Miking said with some regret, "I originally had a longjing shrimp that I was better at, but I was too busy in the kitchen just now, so I didn't care about it all at once, and it's mashed up, so I can only make it for you next time." When talking about the longjing shrimp paste pot, Miking thought of the scene where Jacob suddenly hugged herself in the kitchen. 2 red clouds appeared on her beautiful face. Seeing the food Miking made, Charlie couldn't help but appetite, but out of politeness, he didn't feel ashamed to use his chopsticks directly. Instead he took out a bottle of drink and poured it for the 2 ladies. Later, he picked up the wine glass and said with a smile, "Aunt and Paul, welcome you back to China, welcome you back to Oris Hill, and welcome you to our home as a guest. Let's have a drink together." Jacob also hurriedly echoed, "That's it, I'll take the wind and dust for you, let's have a drink together." Miking picked up a drink and said sincerely, "I really appreciate your hospitality. I didn't expect to be able to have a home-cooked meal at my old classmate's house on the first day of returning to Oris Hill. Thank you very much." Jacob smiled and said, "Miking, we have been old classmates for so many years, what are you doing so politely for this little thing?" After that, he said, "Furthermore, this table of food today is all your credit. I'm just battling it out. I'm very embarrassed about it. How can any old classmates come here as guests and cook it herself?" Miking smiled and said, "What's so embarrassing about this? I said it at first, I will cook today." Charlie smiled and said, "Come on, let's dry this first glass of wine first." Everyone picked up their wine glasses and drinks. The three men drank all the wine in the small wine cup, and the two ladies took their drinks and took a sip. Claire's expression was slightly indifferent, but she can't be blamed. After all, she has also tried her best to express her kindness to Miking. Miking is also very clear in her heart that Claire must have an opinion on herself, so she also deliberately flattered her, and smiled and said to Claire, "Claire, first try the braised prawns cooked by Auntie. See if it suits your taste." With that said, Miking took the initiative to pick up a prawn for her and handed it to her bowl. Claire was somewhat embarrassed. After all, this woman was her father's first love back then. Now she is sitting in her own home and picking food for her. This feeling is always a bit wrong. However, she nodded very kindly, and said softly, "Thank you, Aunt." Having said that, she also tasted the braised prawns. Unexpectedly, the taste of this shrimp made her amazed at the entrance. Well, Claire has eaten this dish of braised prawns more than once, but she has never tasted such a good one. The braised prawns cooked by Miking have moderate sweet and salty taste, tangy aroma, and good flavor. Claire was even more amazed in her heart. This aunt is really not an ordinary woman. Not only does she have a good temperament and a good image, she even cooks so deliciously. She recalled the meals her mother had cooked. There was only one adjective that could describe it, which was hard to swallow. Compared with Miking's cooking skills, it was almost every day. More importantly, her mother never seeks improvement in cooking. What was the taste of cooking more than 20 years ago, it still tastes that cooking now. Later, after she married Charlie and Charlie was in charge of cooking, her life was much better. However, although Charlie's cooking is good, it's still far behind Miking. At this time, Miking gave him another piece of zhukyu, and said with a smile, "At first you tasted this fish, which is also a specialty of Aunt, but I haven't done it for some time. I don't know if it suits you. Taste." Seeing the enthusiastic Miking put the fish into her bowl, Claire nodded in order not to hurt people's face, and said, "Thank you, Aunt, but you don't always have to add food to me, you eat first." Miking nodded and said with a smile, "You must eat more food yourself. If you can't reach it, let Charlie pick it up for you." Claire agreed, and then tasted the fish that Miking gave her. After taking this bite, it immediately surprised her. Miking's cooking is really delicious. The fish is soft, fragrant, and delicious. It is impeccable. Jacob was also dumbfounded. He has never eaten such delicious home-cooked food in his entire life. You have to know that eating a delicious meal at home is completely different from eating a delicious meal in a restaurant. There is a warm feeling of home as a blessing, and that feeling will make men linger. This is why women always say that if you want to keep a man's heart, you must first keep the man's stomach. Jacob felt that his stomach and his taste buds were conquered by Miking's cooking skills at this moment. He looked at Paul enviously and said, "Paul, your mother cooks so deliciously, you are blessed." Paul smiled and said seriously, "Uncle Wilson, this question depends on how you look at it. Take me as an example. When I was in college, it was very painful, because I left home and my mother. No matter what I ate at school, I almost felt a little bit meaningless. Later, because of the busy business of the law firm, I often traveled on business. Most of the time I flew back and forth across the United States, and there was still a lot of time flying back and forth around the world, and I had no chance to taste the food my mother cooked. But my appetite has been spoiled by her cooking skills, so I can't get used to eating wherever I go. This feeling is actually very painful. Jacob sighed. That's true. It is easy for people to change from frugality to luxury, and it is difficult to change from extravagance to frugality. Your mother cooks so deliciously. If it was me, I would not be interested in any food outside. When Claire heard the cryptic meaning in his father's words, he was not very happy, so he took a drink and said to Miking, "Aunt, I toast you, it must be very hard to come back from the United States so far. This glass is to wash the dust for you." Miking hurriedly picked up a drink and said with a smile, "Thank you, Claire, then we will drink a drink instead of wine." Claire touched her cup slightly with that of Miking, and at the same time she couldn't help but sighed and said, "Hey, it would be nice if my mother was also at home. She has been talking about you for so many years, knowing that you are back. She must be very happy." When Claire mentioned Elaine, Jacob and Miking both had unnatural expressions. Both of them knew very well in their hearts that Claire mentioned Elaine at this time, deliberately speaking to them both, reminding them that this family, and her mother, even if her mother is not here, she is the hostess of this house. Miking's dignified expression was a bit embarrassing. She smiled unnaturally and said, "I haven't seen your mother for so many years, and I really want to see her." After speaking, she looked at Jacob and asked, "By the way, where did Elaine go? Why is she not at home?" Jacob hurriedly said, She has been back to her family in the past 2 days. I guess she will be back in a few days." Since Miking's cooking skills are so good, everyone has a little support for this meal. Although Claire was somewhat dissatisfied with Miking in her heart, and was a bit repulsive, she did not have any ability to resist her cooking. She usually pays attention to diet, but this evening she ate 3 times the usual amount of food. Not to mention Charlie and Jacob, the father-in-law. The 2 elders were like windswept clouds, eating almost all the dishes, and there was not much vegetable soup left. After eating, Jacob secretly put his hand under the table, loosened his belt, and temporarily relieved his bulging stomach. At the same time, he could not help but secretly thought, Miking is really perfect in every aspect. If he can really divorce Elaine and stay with her, it will be from the 18th hell, all at once to top heaven. Even Charlie couldn't help but imagine that if Jacob could be with Miking, then his days would be much more comfortable. A mother-in-law like Miking can't really find with a lantern, and she cooks so deliciously. If she becomes his own stepmother-in-law, then she will save him from cooking in the future. It's a pity that he can't let Elaine disappear from the world. After eating dinner later, he has to talk to Isaac to see how to release Elaine from the detention center. After eating, Miking took the initiative to clean up the dining room and kitchen. Charlie hurried to take over, but she refused to let Charlie interfere, saying that women should do everything in the kitchen. After everything was cleaned up, Miking said to the family, "It's late, and Paul and I won't bother you today. Thank you for your hospitality today. I have had a very happy meal. Jacob hurriedly said, "Oh, my king, I have to thank you. It was you who gave us such a hearty meal of Suzhou home-cooked dishes and fulfilled my wish for more than 20 years. My king smiled and nodded. For her, it was also a wish for many years, but in front of Claire, she was not suitable to say many things, so she said, "Okay, I won't bother you. You stay here, we will go first." Jacob asked, "How did you come here?" My king said, "Paul came by car, but the car stopped at the door of your villa." Jacob said, "Oh, can Paul still drive after drinking?" My king smiled and said, "He can't drive, I can drive, and I haven't drunk." "Oh yes," Jacob said with a smile, "I just forgot about this." "That's fine. I'll send you to the car." After that, he opened the door without waiting for my king to express her attitude, walked out first, and then made another sign of please. Seeing this, my king said, "Thank you, Jacob." Charlie and Claire sent them outside the gate, and after saying goodbye to them politely, Jacob took them out. Seeing them walking away, Claire closed the door and said to Charlie, "The feeling between this aunt and my dad is too obvious." "You say my dad will not cheat?" Charlie said seriously, "I think aunt is definitely not that kind of person. She is a very principled person. Even if she likes dad in her heart, she will definitely wait for dad and our mother to divorce." "What development does dad have?" Claire angrily rebuked, "What are you talking about? How could dad divorce mom?" Charlie knew that Claire would definitely not be able to accept such a thing, so he didn't talk to her in depth. After checking the time, he said, "My wife, you can take a good rest at home. Don't go out to find mother." "I will go. I beg a friend to see if they have any other channels, so I can ask for help." Claire nodded and said, "Do you want me to go with you?" Wade hurriedly said, "No need, I just take a taxi to go by myself. You haven't been worrying about it for the past 2 days, so go back to your room and take a rest." Claire sighed and said, "That's okay, then I won't go with you. If you have any questions, remember to communicate with me in time. If you have a clue, you must tell me immediately." Charlie agreed, opening the door and saying, "Okay, then I will go straight away." Saying goodbye to his wife, when Charlie left Thompson and came outside the entire villa area, the old master had just sent away my king and her son. Seeing that Charlie was going out, Jacob hurriedly asked, "Charlie, it's so late, do you want to go out?" Charlie nodded and said, "I'll beg a few friends to see if I can find clues about mom." As soon as Jacob heard this, he suddenly became nervous, and hurriedly grabbed him and asked, "Who are you going to ask for? Are you going to ask Orville? Or to ask that Miss Song?" Charlie said, "Just ask, they have a lot of contacts, maybe there is some way to find mom." "Oh," Jacob clutched his chest with a heartbroken expression, and asked, "My son-in-law, should we be so anxious about this matter? Can't we take it easy? You say, father, it's only a day since these 2 good days, are you going to destroy it yourself?" Charlie naturally knew what Jacob was thinking, he must be 10,000 unwilling, as he wanted to find Elaine back now. After all, he had just met his first love today, and the two seemed to have some opportunities for development. At this time, the person he didn't want to see most was probably Elaine. However, in Charlie's eyes, Jacob's happiness is naturally inferior to that of his wife's happiness. So he could only say with a helpless look, "I'm sorry, Dad, Claire's mood has not been very good recently. If I can't find Mom again, I think she will be stimulated, so I have to find a way to get Mom as fast as possible. Get back." Jacob's expression was extremely ugly, and he said seriously, "Good son-in-law, she is already an adult at first, and an adult must have a certain degree of tolerance. You should temper her and let her wait 2 more. Goodness, Dad begs you." Charlie smiled slightly and said, "Dad, don't be so anxious now. Even if I ask a friend for help, it may not be possible to get Mom back right away." Jacob blurted out, "How could I not be in a hurry? Whether it is Orville or Miss Song, they are all capable people in Oris Hill. Isn't it easy for them to find someone? Maybe your mother will do it tonight. Come back." Charlie looked at Jacob's almost crying expression, and said helplessly, "Dad, this kind of thing is not something we can do whatever we want. Instead of hoping that Mom will come back a few days later, or even not come back, it's better to hope that she will come back soon." After speaking, Charlie added, "After Mom comes back, you can tell her clearly, and then formally divorce her. In this way, you can pursue your own happiness without any worries." Charlie's words made Jacob wake up instantly. Only at this time did he realize that evasion is not the solution to the problem, only to face the problem and completely solve the problem is the best solution. If he wants to stay and fly with Miking, he must divorce Elaine. Only after divorce can he be able to marry Miking into the door upright. Thinking of this, he felt much better, and said to Charlie, "Okay, I know, you can go to your friends for help, I will find someone to inquire about the divorce, and when your mother comes back, I just ask her for a divorce." After bidding farewell to Jacob, Charlie took a taxi to Shangri-La Hotel. Isaac is already here waiting for him. The manager of the hotel respectfully invited Charlie to Isaac's office. As soon as the door of the office closed, Isaac immediately said respectfully, "Mr. Wade, I'm really sorry, but you have to condescend to come to me for your hard work. I should see you." Charlie waved his hand and said, "It's better to say something when I come to see you. It's not easy to explain when you come to see me." Then he asked, "My mother-in-law who stole more than 20 billion from me, how is she in the detention center now?" "She's very miserable." Isaac said, "She became a public enemy of the entire cell inside. I heard that she seemed to have not eaten a bite of food since she went in." Charlie nodded lightly. Said blankly, "She is responsible for all this, and she can't blame others." Isaac said seriously on the side, "Mr. Wade, I really didn't expect that when such a woman saw more than 20 billion deposits, she was not afraid or worried, and she didn't even think about it. How could there be so much money in the card, so she dared to transfer all the money to her card? This person is simply too courageous." Charlie smiled and said, "My mother-in-law, she loved money the most in life. She used to be a third person to intervene in old man and his first love, because her husband was still relatively wealthy at the time, which can be regarded as a standard. What she didn't expect was that after getting married, the conditions in husband's family began to get worse, and soon there was no money. This person ran for money all her life, but she didn't get it. So her heart has been suppressed and has been distorted. Isaac said, Mr. Wade, in fact, I dared to suggest you that it is best to let your mother-in-law learn a little more lessons in it. At the very least, she should be detained for 3 years and 5 years, and she can be detained for 1.5 years. She has just been locked in for less than 2 days now. Do you want to release her? Charlie nodded and said, let her come out, mainly because I feel bad for my wife. But if she is not honest after she comes out, I still have other ways to treat her slowly. After speaking, Charlie said again, yes, tomorrow morning you will arrange for the police station to interrogate her, like I told you last time, find all the actors that should be found, and prepare all the props, and then give her a performance. A big drama. Isaac blurted out immediately, Mr. Wade, don't worry, I must have everything ready. Charlie said indifferently, I came to see you, mainly to go through the process with you again. Don't make any mistakes then. Isaac nodded and said, Mr. Wade, let's start sorting it out. After Charlie sorted out all the procedures for tomorrow with Isaac, he took a taxi home without rush. But at this moment, in the Oris Hill Detention Center, Elaine's nightmare continues. Because she was tortured and beaten by all kinds of means from the time she first entered the detention center, and she was poured cold water on her head, plus not eating a bite for 2 days and nights, Elaine had completely collapsed. Not only did she have a bad cold, and also developed a high fever. The high fever made Elaine burn all over, and she was almost fainted by the high fever, but at this time, she was still not allowed to lie in the bed, and could only curl up and shiver in the corner of the detention center cell alone. Because of her fever, she felt an extreme cold, which made her sway her whole body non-stop. She felt that she was about to be unable to hold it, so she murmured and pleaded, Please, please have mercy on me, give me a quilt, I'm so cold, I'm so cold. Old Mrs. Wilson sneered, What is your name? People like you still want to cover the quilt. I tell you, you have to sleep in the toilet tonight. Wendy echoed, Grandma, I think she has to take a bath in cold water. How about we go to the toilet and help her? When Elaine heard this, she cried her nose and burst into tears, and pleaded miserably, Mom, I really can't do it. If you let me sleep in the toilet and give me a cold shower tonight, then I must die here at night, I beg you to show mercy. Old Mrs. Wilson said viciously, You still expect me to pity you? I tell you, I wish you would die soon. You better not wait until night to die, you better die now. Elaine wailed and said, Mom, you and me just have the contradiction between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, and I have suffered from your anger for more than 20 years. Why are you killing me now? Even if you are angry with me, there is no need to fix me for not letting you live in the villa, right? After finishing talking, she looked at the big sister Gina in the cell, crying and begging, Sister Gina, I know you hate this unfilial daughter-in-law, but I don't let her live in my villa. This mother-in-law is just drawing the line. I have been married to the Wilson family for more than 20 years. I have never beaten her, never really scolded her, and even been bullied by her all the time. During this time, the Wilson family is not good enough. I have mocked her and ridiculed her. But it's all disrespect, but that's all. But you also saw how she treated me in the past 2 days. She beat me, scolded me, tried everything she could to torture me, bully me. This is basically killing me. As a sensible person, can't you see who is the wicked person between me and her? If I am as evil as her, do you think she can live to this day? If I'm as evil as her, how could she still be so healthy and even fight me? This proves that I am not as evil as she said, and she is the real evil person. When talking about this, Elaine was in tears, and the whole person was like a street dweller who had suffered great injustice. Seeing that she dared to accuse her, the old Mrs. Wilson walked up to her angrily and slapped her face with a slap. Immediately afterwards, the Lady Wilson grabbed her hair and slammed it against the wall, swearing in her mouth, "You shameless thing, you dare to provoke discord here, you see I won't kill you." Hearing Elaine's tearful complaint, Gina also realized at this time that what she said seemed to make sense. Although the Lady Wilson all accused Elaine of being unfilial, and even scolded her to beat her and prevent her from living in the villa of Thompson. But the Lady Wilson didn't look like a person who had been tortured for a long time. She was in good health and strong in spirit, and she was not at all soft in fighting people. So it seems that if Elaine has 10 points for her unfilial piety, then her hatred and revenge for Elaine would have 100 points. Seeing that the Lady Wilson was still fighting Elaine at this time, Gina felt something was wrong. She immediately said, "Don't fight the Lady Wilson. You are indeed a bit cruel. In any case, you won't drive her to death, right?" Hearing this, Elaine breathed a sigh of relief. It has been almost 2 days since she entered the detention center, and she had long seen that Gina was the only support for the Lady Wilson here. With Gina behind her back, she dared to insult and beat herself unscrupulously. If Gina is no longer supporting her, or even Gina feels sorry for her and prohibits her from doing anything to herself, then her future life will be really much better. Thinking of this, Elaine continued to cry, "Sister Gina, you are more sensible, you can tell at a glance, between me and the Lady Wilson, she is not me who really wants to kill each other. She has been thinking push me to death. If you don't do anything again, I might really be tortured to death by this cruel Lady Wilson." Old Mrs. Wilson was a little impatient, and hurriedly blurted out, "Gina, you must not believe this woman who is talking nonsense, there is no truth in her mouth." Gina said seriously, "Is there any truth in her mouth? I really don't know, but I'm not blind. It's almost enough for the Lady Wilson if you are enough. After all, you haven't suffered any injuries or physical torture. Why do you want to fix her to death like this?" Old Mrs. Wilson felt a little in her heart. She realized that she had gone too far. Although she has not dealt with the hate in heart yet, her own behavior has already broken Gina's heart balance, making her feel that she is a bit too much. If she doesn't want to do anything, then Gina's inner balance will lean towards Elaine, and then, she will really be passive. Thinking of this, the old Mrs. Wilson hurriedly burst into tears, and pointed to Elaine and complained, "Gina, you must not be fooled by this wicked woman." As she said, she was so angry that her voice trembled, and she sternly said, "Do you think she is a good person without hitting me? Do you know what she has done to our family? Back then, my son had a very good first love girlfriend, and was also a very ideal candidate for a daughter-in-law. That girl is really a pretty girl and a sensible girl, so many times better than this shameless woman. At that time, my son was already preparing, and he married someone after he graduated, but do you know what happened just before graduation?" Gina looked surprised and asked, "What happened?" The old Mrs. Wilson pointed at Elaine and said angrily, "It's this stinky shameless woman." Knowing that our family was well off at the time, she wanted to marry in and be a wife, so she took advantage of my son to be drunk and forced him to follow her. My son had a relationship. Then she told my son's girlfriend about it shamelessly. The woman who finally forced to break up with my son and go abroad. In the end, my son was forced to marry this pish who he didn't love at all. Since then, for more than 20 years, my son has not been happy for a day. My son's marriage is unfortunate, thanks to this woman. She ruined my son's life. I hit her twice. Do you think it can make up for my son's lifelong happiness?" The women in the entire cell were stunned. No one thought that Elaine had done such a shameless thing back then. What do women hate most? The cheating man and the mistress. Therefore, Mrs. Wilson's words successfully aroused everyone's hatred of Elaine again. So many people scolded, "This stinky shameless woman dares to do such shameless things at a young age. That's it, how can a serious woman insist on getting on her body when a man is drunk? Isn't this just a lie? It's disgusting. It's nothing more than a third party intervenes, the key is to use such abusive methods." Seeing that she had successfully helped Elaine, a wave of hatred, old Mrs. Wilson was relieved in her heart, but she couldn't help but think to herself, "Elaine, at this time, she still wants to instigate discord and want to come back? Okay, then I will drive you into the abyss." As a result, she also shed 2 lines of tears, and angrily complained, "You don't know the most disgusting thing. This sorrowful woman, and my son's girlfriend at the time, were still roommates in the same dormitory back then, best friends and good friends. As a result, this sorrowful woman turned her head to do such a shameless thing. She slept with her good girlfriend's boyfriend. She not only robbed her good girlfriend's boyfriend, but also forced her good girlfriend to go to the United States. I heard that she has not returned to China for more than 20 years. This is all thanks to this woman." Mrs. Wilson's words successfully made the little pity that everyone had just established instantly turn to ashes. It was replaced by a total hatred of Elaine. Elaine was so nervous that she almost collapsed. She didn't expect that the Lady Wilson would move out of my king's affairs and turn into ashes the little mass foundation she had just established. What Elaine did to my king and Jacob, their sweet lovers, was an extreme evil that all women disdain. Therefore, everyone's sympathy for her disappeared in an instant. Not only that, everyone's hatred for her is even stronger. One of the women jumped down from the upper bunk and came to Elaine in 3 or 2 steps, picked up her plastic slippers, and slammed Elaine's face fiercely. "I beat you to death. You shameless thing. My husband was hooked up by a slew-number Thai woman like you." A group of women immediately screamed, and someone shouted, "Good fight, kill this shameless." At this time, Elaine was beaten and yelled, but 2 more women rushed towards her quickly, kicked her one by one, and then punched and kicked her. Old Mrs. Wilson looked at all this coldly, and sneered in her heart. "Elaine, you still want to fight with me based on your little weight, it's just looking for death." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.